All right, welcome to the Coaching Collective podcast, episode 13. So today we are going to work through a wrap-up with Donna Atkins and Michael Galante. So Donna is a well-known posing coach from the northwest suburbs, correct?
Yes, they'll say that.
Yep, of Melbourne. And
The hood. That's
The
it.
hood.
That's it.
And Michael is a trainer and coach from, I guess you could say, the north, correct?
Not too far from Donna, actually.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, you got the gym in Preston, though.
Preston, yeah, which is about 15 minutes from where Donna is. So,
For me, is it? Yeah.
Yeah,
because we're obviously outer north, so you're that little bit further in.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I guess we'll start with Donna. Introduce yourself, and then we'll hand it over to Michael as well.
Yeah. So, what can I say? I've been in the industry. I've been competing since 2003, probably before. When were you born, Isabel? Before then?
I was born in 2001.
Jesus.
Wow. Jeez. Okay. You're in nappies still when I competed. Yeah. Been around since 2003. However, I think I attended my first show in 2002, and that's why I started. Been a competitor ever since. I actually can't believe I'm still competing at the young age of 48. I just turned 48.
Hang on, did it say pro card winner at 47, or was it 46?
47, yes.
Wow. 47, there you go.
47, won my pro card last year at WBFF on the Gold Coast. And I've actually competed across a few federations. So, I don't know. Oh, what am I thinking? What have I done? INBA, ICN, WBFF, IFBB, ANB as well. So over the years. So I love all the shows. I love going to them all, as you know, running around like I just talked about. So I've been a competitor, posing coach for a very long time. I can't even tell you. I'll say like officially, maybe like almost 9 years, I'll say officially. But I guess I've been helping competitors way before that. Before posing coach was ever like an official title in our industry, it was like you were just like someone that was helping your friend from the gym. So it kind of just started like that. And I've just, I would never believe that I'd still be, in this industry today. Like I love it. I count my lucky stars that I'm still here.
You haven't been full-time for that whole time, have you?
No, I haven't been full-time. So I was working the corporate industry up until 2021. So I got made redundant in September 2021. And I was doing posing. It was like my side hustle, but I was working 7 days a week. So I was working 5 days a week at my corporate job, and then 2 days a week on the weekends doing posing. And then the balance changed. I went part-time at work and did 4 days at my corporate job, 3 days at posing. So still 7 days a week. I did that for maybe 3 years. And then I got to the point where I was 3 days a week at my corporate job, 4 days a week posing. And then that's when I kind of got the virtual tap on the shoulder working from home. And they were saying, we unfortunately have to let you go. And that's when I was in that kind of crossroads period where I was like thinking, okay, this is really what I want to do. Let's go for it 100% full ball. So I haven't looked back. It was like there's always a silver lining to everything, I say.
Of course.
I'm living my dream. Let's just say that.
And I've always wondered as well, do you struggle with the seasonality of it, or is it quite 52 weeks?
To begin with, I did, because there is that definitive period of that season A, like where we've got our shows in March to May, I want to say generally. And then we've got our September to November shows for season B. And there was that period, but now it's because people are in the between of that, people are still practicing for future shows or future seasons. So for me, no, it's just continuous throughout. It just happens to be that on a Sunday I'm not at a show or any something like that.
No, cool. Because like even myself, I typically get like, I had a girl start her prep yesterday, 22 weeks, and like she'll start posing in the next probably month, because you need longer exposure. And I think people are starting to realize that, which is obviously a point for later. Michael, introduce yourself and we'll go from there as well.
Thanks, man. So as MG said, I'm also MG for those that don't know. I'm also referred to as MG.
The famous.
I'm a comp prep coach as well. Been around for about 10 years. My wife and I own a gym in Preston, right near Donna, called Optimum Nutrition and Training. And I also wear the hat of Victorian promoter, and potentially soon to be elsewhere in Australia for ANB. So stay tuned for that. There's a little link. which is exciting. So I'm kind of in the industry from two sides. One, I'm a current competitor as well. Actually, I reckon I had my first posing session with Donna like 9 years ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Durham at Airport West, wasn't it?
Do you remember younger me with hair? No, it wasn't. Was it?
Yeah, it was.
No, oh no, that was the middle. I was thinking of that we went to Mooney Ponds for a bit, but that was temporary.
Yeah, right. Yes.
And then you went to Fox.
Yes.
Yeah, I've followed her around for a long time, and I had a little bit more hair back then as well. But yeah, that's Donna's has been around for a while and has been like one. I think you were like the only one around that time. There was maybe you and one other that was known as a posing coach. Because I was having this chat with MT the other day, and he was like, when he did his first comp, which was say 14 years ago, there were none, and it was just like you Googled it, right? Or you Googled it, or you spoke to someone at the gym.
Yeah.
So that just shows how.
Was it 9 years ago? That was out when I first met you.
Yeah, probably 8 or 9. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, which is about. I mean, I was in fitness.
Yes.
Like I've been around for about a decade, but officially not as a comp rep coach for probably 3 or 4 years after that.
Yeah.
Because I also was working corporate. I was actually a bank manager for 12 or 13 years. So I finished high school and pretty much started as a bank teller like 3 weeks after, right? Well, parents, what are you going to do? You're not going to go to school till next year. You can't just go out and party and do all this stuff. So I was like, all right, well, you guys both work at the bank. I'm just going to work at the bank. And then just like that, 12 years went past.
Yeah.
But so, I definitely knew that it wasn't where I wanted to continue to spend the rest of my future. And I was heavily obsessed with training and bodybuilding at the time. And one thing led to another. And then when I met my wife, it kind of all just fell into place. She's got a degree in nutritional medicine. She was a PT, working at a gym. That's where we met. She barred me for a long time, but finally I got through. Donna, remember? and then within 6 months of getting together, we literally opened the gym. So like we took big risks really early on.
Yeah.
And everything's worked out amazing. We'll be married 4 years this year. So
cool.
But and then just in more recent times, this will be my 3rd season as the president for Victorian ANB. So
it's funny because I started in corporate as well, but I wasn't in it for as long as you guys were. I worked for Coles head office as a food tech.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was only probably 2.5, 3 years, but it was long enough.
But were you doing what you're doing now as a side hustle too?
I started that about 2 years in because to be honest, I needed more money at the time. And I knew that I could pick up clients. I got a handful. And then I went away and I came back and I thought to myself, I can't keep doing this. Like I hate it. Because basically what I was doing as a food tech this is not what the job actually is. The labels on the back of that shit. Yeah, that's what I was doing. It was mind numbing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, just like formulas, reading product information sheets. And similar story, obviously on a shorter time frame. How old are you as well, MG? Michael?
I'm 36. And actually because we've had the gym 5 years, but I've only been out of the bank for 3. So the first 2 years we had the gym, I was working both of them full time. So and Don, you remember this? I remember how many times you're like, dude, you got to burn yourself out. I'd get up, say, be at the gym by 5, work 5 till 7:45 in the morning, leave at 8, go to work, be at the bank from 8 till 5, leave the bank at 5:15, back to the gym and do like 5:30 till 8, and that was 7 days a week back then.
Yeah,
and it took 2 years of doing both to finally be able to pull the pin on the full-time job.
It's funny you say that. I know this has nothing to do with what we're sort of planning to talk about today, but I have this conversation with a lot of people. That's hard work, and both of you have sort of similar paths to what I've done. I probably bit off more than I could chew as I got into coaching because I had a lot more clients than I could manage at times. When people get into the industry, they don't want to work like that anymore. They don't want to support the full-time job before they go full-time on coaching, personal training, etc. And then they start struggling financially and then they fall out of the industry. And they don't acknowledge it. Like, I guess like us and others sort of put ourselves through the ringer to get to where we are. And to be honest, actually, I mentor a few people and I find it frustrating because what they complain about is just a reflection of them not wanting to work as much as they can.
Like we had to pay our dues, right? Like I would love to walk straight into full-time coaching, but my first 3 clients, I had to sell for $40 and do them on a Sunday just to get 3 clients to start with.
Yeah.
So it's, although like if you jump on Instagram now, I know you probably look at all of our profiles, it's like, oh, they've got a decent following and they've got a lot of clients, but what Instagram will never show you is how long that took to build and what had to happen behind the scenes. Like, same as Don, 2 full-time jobs, working Sundays, early mornings, late nights. So, these things just take time.
Yeah, they do.
That saying it takes years to be an overnight success, and not saying like, I'm not successful, like obviously there's more that I want to achieve, just like you guys as well, but it does take years. And you're right, people don't see that on Instagram or social media. They just think, yeah, like you said, oh my God, they're doing well, they're doing all this coaching, but yeah, that's 7 days a week. And that's like bending backwards to fitting with other people's schedules just so that you can get those clients in, and just so that you can people see you as being someone that they can trust and that you're reputable. That takes so much time. So much time.
Yeah, I'll never forget having to work the rogue hours just to fit in a client because I wanted the money. Yeah. Sunday nights. I remember doing Sunday nights and just thinking, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
But it led me to here. So I guess it was kind of worth it. But and like you said, you do have to meet the client. Like now, obviously, I still meet the client to some degree, like halfway. But back then, if a client wants this time and you have to go out of your way to do it, that's what you give them.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I'm a little bit firmer with it, but you still have to do it to some degree. People don't really respect that, I don't think either. Yeah, but so I guess let's jump into the season. So what do you guys think of the season A to begin with, just generally speaking, and then we'll get a little bit more specific.
There you go, Michael. MG.
Whoever wants to start.
Look, I'll approach it from two avenues, I suppose. I always love season A because typically you have more first timers. That's how it feels like for me. You have more first timers, so it's more exciting. So people's first show, I feel like sometimes setting the expectation of what the season's going to be like is easier from a coaching point of view. And you've probably got more clients who aren't necessarily competing because they're gunning for that pro card. Like, they've always wanted to compete. They're ticking off a goal. And yeah, there's still some, elite athletes on the roster that compete in season A. I'm not saying it's not a quality season, but I think the excitement around season A is different to season B. I feel like season B is like a really hardcore competitive season, and season A is like a nice start to the year where you get a lot of first timers, and the competition's still good. But I find season A to be quite fun. So I've enjoyed it, and I think part of the enjoyment for me has been the roster of athletes that I've had. I've been fortunate enough to work with some really amazing people this season. I was very happy with how our show went. It was it's quite a stressful process to organise a show. And when it goes off without a hitch, it's pretty thrilling because you put kind of 6 months of effort into it. And just, to speak from ANB's point of view, if you look at last season, our numbers basically grew 100%. So we doubled what we did from season B last year, and hopefully we can continue to do that and put the ANB name out there, particularly in Victoria. So I'm pretty happy with the season. Again, I suppose it's the mixture of understanding what each federation looks like. And I think that's kind of been the challenge this season. And we talk about, ICN likes one look, we like a different look, NBA like a different look. So I think it's been difficult for coaches this season to try and pick where to put their athletes in. And, I'll even have conversations with Donna where I'm like, Donna, I'm putting, because Donna's got a lot of my clients and we share information. Like, I'm putting them in this division. Donna's like, no, are you sure? And I'm like, I think so. And Donna will come back and say, oh, I reckon you should do this division. So I found that this has been the most we've ever had to have these conversations. So I think that's what I've found a little confusing about season A. And I think sometimes, as someone who coaches in multiple states, I think even state to state, it's seeming to be a little bit more confusing. What we like in Vic is definitely not what they like in New South Wales. And equally, I feel like WA has a different look again. I feel like maybe WA and Queensland seem to be a little more aligned if I'm talking about ICN in terms of what judging expectations are. And I think Nationals on the weekend, there was a little bit of mix from ICN Vic to ICN New South Wales. So I think that's something that, a few coaches need to wrap their head around. And I don't know, what's the solution to making that more unified?
I had trouble with that. Obviously. Yeah, I had trouble with that because I physically asked you what you thought of my client. And I found that was the hardest part of actually coaching her, was like that specific client was finding where she fit in.
Sure.
I don't know what your perspective is on it, Donna, but it's just hard because they are three different federations. I was under the impression that NBA and ANB, well, my observation is they're quite well aligned to some degree. I'm not too sure what your positions are on that.
I'll say no, they're not. Is that be correct?
Well, they're more so than ICN. Yeah. Go on. You expand on what your thought was.
Oh no, in terms of what the look is for each federation.
Well, I thought ANB and NBA were closer to each other than what ANB and say ICN were.
I'm not sure about that. I would like to. I seem to think that maybe NBA and ICN would be a lot more similar in the look. I don't know how do you feel about that, MG?
Yeah, well, look, NBA was formed out of ANB, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you look on the website, you look a lot of the descriptions, they're pretty similar. I think the looks for NBA and ANB are closer. I'll give you an example. NBA and ANB 100% want a harder bikini athlete. Hands down. So, and I see a lot of, ANB and NBA bikini girls step on stage and then they just instantly will do fitness or sports in ICN. And I've got a couple myself in my team who are doing that. A couple of whom Donna does their posing too, right? So like there's definitely a definitive difference there. I think also, there's certain divisions we have that NBA, but we don't have that NBA does have. And we were talking about this off air a little bit. Like, you look at physique as a division, and it's like, when you got somebody who's really big, puts on a pair of board shorts, how do you kind of separate that from, what's the line between classic and so we only have we just have one board short division, and we don't have that fitness. So we call it fitness, which is board shorts, so that we don't have, that sort of cross competition. But equally with us, you can only do one, right? So if you're a bikini athlete, you can't do the next division up. Now, we are bringing out sports in season B. I can announce that on air now. I haven't announced it formally live, but there's another spoiler on the podcast. So we'll be bringing out a female sports. But again, we're going to be asking athletes to still pick a division. We don't want you in all three. And we're only going to let you pick 4 categories as a total anyway. Yeah. So with us, you're limited to 4. So like there's some of the things we're trying to introduce to try and really separate the boundaries between each of these classes so that coaches and athletes can go, okay, that's absolutely where I fit in, rather than let's just try both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is sort of touching on that point. Whenever I personally, and whenever Michael and I discuss the natural federations, we look at ANB very much so as one being the most competitive in the fact that there seems to be like a higher caliber of athlete. Like people fit the actual criteria a lot more. Like if you compare the athletes compared to the criteria on the website, they're all in that. Whereas say if you go to ICN, they're quite separated sometimes. And like, I know we discussed this prior to hopping onto the podcast, but I think having the limitation on the amount of categories that people can do and the amount of classes as well further pushes ANB as being sort of, I'm not going to say elite, but
superior.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Just don't want to be rude. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be rude, but I see, in my personal opinion, like my personal view, I think that if I had athletes who looked great, I would be pushing them to ANB, because I know that they're going to be judged on the fact that they do come into, they are in condition and judged against the criteria, as opposed to putting somebody on stage who is like super soft and gets an award for like a look that wouldn't be awarded, if that makes sense, or shouldn't be awarded. Yeah.
They're basically going to be, they're going to be judged truly in A and B.
Yeah. And like there is just a higher standard. And I would rather have athletes winning in a federation that has a higher standard than winning obviously in a federation that has a lower standard. And that does award looks that, to be honest, are not as like hard to get, if that makes sense.
It's just like
I think the thing that we like have at the moment to our advantage is because we're having smaller shows, all right, we're not getting, when you got 20 guys on stage, the chances of 6 of them being not in condition is far higher than when you've only got 6 or 7 guys on stage, right? So we are drawing like a good type of athlete, but we're actually not getting the same amount of numbers. So the likelihood of us having, let's just say, inferior quality athletes is lower because we're just not getting enough. The more you put on stage, the less likely, 5 out of 20 are not going to be to the criteria.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that at the moment we've got right is like, if you were a male and you went into our classic division and there was 2 guys, right, and one of them was shredded to the bone and one was just way bigger, we will pick the bigger guy. 100 times out of 100, it's in our criteria. We like the bigger muscle. Even if the lines aren't quite as there as the other guy, I could 100% say we pick that guy 100 out of 100 times. So as a coach...
Is that in all male divisions or just certain?
Just in classic, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, like we just like big round muscle bellies. You don't need to be as shredded as bodybuilding. We will pick that type of person over the leaner, smaller guy who's like shredded to the bone 100 out of 100 times. So like as a coach, if I go back to my coach, if I've got that sort of guy, I'm going to put him in A and B. If he's shredded to the bone and a little bit smaller, I'm going to put him in ICM.
Could you look at it as in the fact though, talking about how other federations have competitors that go into different categories, especially someone who's maybe a first timer and even maybe a coach that is not sure, having that, okay, maybe I'll put them in bikini, maybe I'll put them in sports, maybe I'll put them in fitness. And then as they, because this is the first time that potentially they've never been through a comp prep, their body's never done this before. So we don't know what they're going to look like at the end of their prep. So, maybe finding those, placing them in ICN and seeing where they fit. And then from there, they could go, and this is when people start to explore other federations, maybe like ANB, and go, okay, I think now I can see where I sit. Maybe I just hone in on doing bikini or just hone in on doing fitness instead of doing multiple, categories in that one federation. So I think that's another kind of draw card for ICN that a lot of people think, well, I'm not kind of sure. I'm not one or the other. I kind of want to see. And I see competitors where they do really well in one, not so well in another. And then for their second or third season, they'll actually say, I'm not going to, I might not do sports again, but I'll do 3 fitness categories and I'll maybe only just do 1 sport. So then they kind of start to narrow down their look, so to speak.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
And I think equally what we see as well, and I just had it, Don, you just came up with a good idea without saying it. How about like if you can cross compete in different categories when it's your first show? Once you've done your first show, then from then onwards, you have to pick one class. Like one, you can only do bikini or you can only do sport. There's maybe a federation suggestion.
Yeah.
I remember when I did my first show in IFBB, we were all looking, like there was like probably 8 of us in the division. And there was one guy who showed up who had never competed before. He took his clothes off and we just looked at each other and we were like, all right, like we're done. Like the guy looked that good. Sometimes first time competitor doesn't mean that they're inferior. This guy was like a weathered bodybuilder and was 38 years old. Absolute monster. He ended up winning a pro card in Vegas, which sort of says it all. So I guess, like you could like even that idea where you do have the cross competition, you can still get very good first time competitors. Yeah. Which makes it difficult. But what I was going to say back to with the classic physique marking based on the larger size, do you feel like that doesn't disadvantage those who really do strive for that condition? And do you kind of look for like that classic symmetry, which would be awarded?
Yeah, we do. And, we would almost say like, if you're of a reasonable size and you're shredded to the bone, you should probably jump up to bodybuilding.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess it gives, go on.
Like we're specifically looking for, a little bit softer than bodybuilding. But with all the muscle, right? Classic lines, really, really nice posing. But it is really easy to differentiate between the two. And it makes it easier for us to judge. There's 2 reasons why it makes it easier for us to judge, right? Number one is you got no cross competing. So you're only looking at people in one division. And if he's not right for bodybuilding, he's not right for bodybuilding, but you're not going to see him again in classic, right? So he's kind of missed his mark. 2, we have the same judges for the whole country. Right, we fly them in. So when we have a show, we fly them in from New South Wales. When we go to Queensland, we fly them from New South Wales to Queensland. So when the same people are making the decisions, it also becomes easier. So
of course.
To go back to Isabel's point, you feel like you would put someone in because you understand how they'd be judged. It's because the same judges are constantly making the same decisions all across the nation. And that's kind of that we're going for that like unified front, that unified look. But, on the other side to that, are we missing opportunity because the more people that do more divisions across more categories, from a business point of view, it's an opportunity to make more money. But That's not a conversation we've ever had, to be honest. It hasn't come up as yet. Will it? Sure, I'm sure it will. But just making sure that, we can make it as clear as day to coaches. And, that's part of the reason is I'm a coach and I'm an athlete first and foremost too. So if there's something that I see that confuses me, well, it's going to freaking confuse everybody else too.
Mm-hmm. I also noticed as well, sort of going off topic here, the wellness category really hasn't got the traction at all at the moment. There was a bigger pool at the Nationals. There was still only like 6 or 7 of them compared to
was it just one division that they had, like one
class? Well, there was 27 in fitness and there was 7. It might have even been 6 in wellness. I understand at IFBB level, the wellness is still not there either. Like I think when I was in Perth, there's only one competitor for wellness. But is that something that you have? Are you doing a wellness category in ANB at the moment?
No, not at the moment. We've spoken about it. Actually, Donna and I had the first Miss Wellness twice in Victoria, who I coached, and Donna did all of her posing. And, we had intentions to keep pursuing that as a division and hoping that it grew, but it kind of just fizzled out a little bit. And it's at no fault of the federation. Like at the end of the day, if you can't, you're not getting competitors for it. How many goes at it are you going to keep having?
Yeah, I know.
Like we don't want to be putting one person on stage, in the middle of the show. So I think there was like a bit of confusion around what type of person qualifies for wellness, right? And I think what all the federations didn't want is someone who just couldn't get lean in the lower half.
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of people would be potentially reluctant to do a natural federation wellness. That and like it's still a newish division. And I think if you're set on doing wellness and building that amount of muscle mass, then like it's hard in a natural federation. And like you can diet for 20 weeks and then realize that like you really don't have that muscle mass there. And especially if you are a first-time competitor, then like you really don't know as well. Like you could literally have the whole entire time in your head until like you're 15 weeks out, you're doing wellness, and then you realize like majority of what I was holding was body fat as opposed to muscle.
But the same
and it is quite disappointing seeing females on stage who go for wellness, but then they are just holding body fat as opposed to like having that sort of developed muscularity through their lower body as well. I
still feel like it's newish in the natural federations, and you would have found even MG seen that even in those shows where we've had wellness, where there's been 4 or 5, it's been a mixed bag of people. It's people who have gone, well, I want to do bikini, but I'm just going to see how I go in wellness. And then you're right, Isabel, there would have been some that would have been, in better condition than others, and maybe holding onto more body fat, and that's what they don't want. And then like I said, it's what MG said, it's just about people, it's not the fault of the federation, it's just people just entering it and then just creating that, kind of having that a lot of people getting more interested in it and starting to build consistency as into what they're looking for. But I felt like there's been like a mixed bag of competitors in terms of look, and people have kind of been confused. They've just kind of entered and thought, all right, I'm going to give it a go because maybe, they are not as conditioned in the lower half. Yeah.
And even at ICN Nationals, it was a very, very mixed bag as well, with the wellness girls. And when you think about it, it is hard to find a girl who has like really developed like legs, glutes, hamstrings, muscularity, and then they have that slight imbalance between their upper and lower body, but then they can still get into condition and they can still develop like somewhat of a tie-in through their body, but still maintain that mass. Especially in natural federations, and again, like with a first timer. So yeah, even nationals, like every second girl, there was probably 2 girls up there who you would think fit the actual criteria.
I find that interesting that yes, the standard for conditioning is lower, but if you look at like an IFBB level wellness, IFBB being where wellness has got the traction overseas more so than it does here, they are still conditioned. They're more conditioned than the bikini athletes.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of genetic predisposition and structure that categorizes them to wellness. Yeah. So the fact that you go to ICN, you see girls up there who aren't in shape and that's an excuse to do wellness doesn't make sense to me. Because if anything, the standard in conditioning and wellness should be beyond that of bikini. Obviously, then you got a fine line between that and figure. I actually picked up a figure girl yesterday, which I was quite excited about because a lot of girls don't really lean towards figure. But I guess then, yeah, you are like, it's a fine line between going figure and wellness, as opposed to in an open fed where they are exposed to potentially enhancements. Those figure girls do take that further step up, which separates them from wellness because they're willing to accept that risk. Obviously, when you take the body's genetic potential on a natural level, it's harder to get a clear deviation. Anyway, back to my initial point. Yeah, I find interesting that with wellness, like there is an acceptance in ICN because that's the one where wellness has any sort of traction for less conditioning. When if we look at it on a broader level, wellness conditioning is actually above that of a bikini conditioning, or at least equivalent with great amounts of muscle. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
yeah, well, I just think at the end of the day, the judges can only judge what stands on the stage, right?
That's a good point.
Like, so if you get 6 girls and they're all soft in the lower half, then you're just going to pick the best one out of the 6, right?
Yeah.
But I think across the country, we get to see really from a natural fan. I can't talk for nationals in Sydney on the weekend because I didn't see it. No one stood on stage with massive glutes to tie into the hamstring and wellness yet, with some lines through the quads.
Yeah.
All those girls are doing sports.
Yeah.
Like I can even pick 1 or 2 that I saw across NBA and maybe even the last show that ICN did, the Melbournes, that potentially could have done wellness that were in sports. So I think it's just not fancy enough yet in the natural world. People don't want it, and coaches aren't pushing clients that way.
Yeah.
It's hard to push clients that way when there's not traction there, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want them to get up there and think that, like, if I had a client, I don't want them getting up there to compete against one other person or even themselves and be in the shape of their lives. And it's like, oh, here's your gold medal. Like, what's the fun in that? The other thing as well, back a topic again, that's why I was so intent on picking Effie's category so carefully. Like, I didn't want her, if she got up there and she didn't place first or whatever she really wanted, and she was beaten by fair competition, which she was, I'm all for that. That's good. But to have her up there and to know that she's putting all this work and she loses because they're just not happy with how she fits criteria, to me, that was not something that I wanted to happen, because I knew that she would just get out of that and be like, fuck this, I'm not doing it. Like, I can't see the point. And especially because she is more so confined to, because I think with her, obviously not people listening won't know her. I wouldn't say the national show was like she could probably fit into what they were wanting there. I'd say she's more leaning towards, with her look, like an IFBB bikini kind of look, but she's not at the age bracket or has the willingness to take associated risk to compete with that field. So it's very hard to allocate her to the federations we have on hand. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm sure you guys can relate when you say the last thing you want is to put someone up there and for them not to do well simply from a poor decision on your behalf.
Yeah.
I've done it before, and it was with a guy last year, and I knew he wouldn't listen, and he was deflated. Yeah, like it was just like he wants to compete again now, but at the time it was like, I'm never doing this again.
I'll give you an example of someone who like another coach, not me, who made like a decision that went the complete other ways. Like you guys know Beck Cameron, so she had a girl who did ANB last year, season B, who did really well, came second in the overall, and then did ICN 2 weeks later in bikini, and massive lineup. That's the one Elise did really well. Elise won that one. She didn't place in that. Went to nationals in Queensland. Lily, and then won the pro card.
Yeah. I remember that because I remember standing next to her on stage and she didn't place. And then
she went and won the pro card. Imagine how confusing that would be, right?
Yeah.
So you do your state, and in your state, the lineup was like 14 or 15, right? Like good lineup in that open. Yeah. And she looked amazing. I think she absolutely deserved to be in the top call out of that lineup, but didn't place in Victoria. They went at something a little bit softer, and then won at nationals, won the pro card. Like, if Beck didn't say, "Hey, go to nationals," because they like a different look in Queensland, that girl would not be a pro right now. Like that's confusing.
What opportunity does the ICN? Obviously, I'm familiar with the ANB NBA Pro card because of Marion, but what opportunity does the ICN Pro card open up, like on an international level for you?
Just ICN Worlds.
Yeah, so it's nothing. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So like we've got a ton of affiliations. Like definitely
There's also pro. There's also they do have a pro lineup here at the Nationals as well. So they'll do like a pro lineup as well as being able to compete at Worlds. Yeah.
You're asking about alliance federations, right?
Overseas.
I think that is that what you meant?
Oh yeah, I did.
I didn't know what
Because
you meant,
obviously
sorry.
when a competitor sort of captures that and wants to take that step forward, I feel like the look is more to go international rather than national. Yeah, because your pool, I'm not sure. I'm not too familiar with the pro circuit and ICN in Australia.
I suppose they have ICN does go into quite a few countries.
Yeah.
So the opportunity is that you just do ICN, but within different countries. I don't think there's a direct affiliation with anyone. Like I know, like we obviously have DFAC and there's about 15 or 16 other international federations that we're aligned with that our pros can go and compete at.
I was really impressed with that with Marion's pro card. We're discussing tonight what she wants to do next. So
that's something we don't promote enough, right? Like you're only going to know that really. We don't promote it. You'll know if we've got a show coming up or if you become a pro because you'll be able to find it. But that's probably something that we should promote a little bit more. And that's not to say ICN don't have an affiliation with someone. It's just not one that I know of.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's it's just the I Compete family worldwide, but it's not. There's not affiliations with other federations overseas that I know of. Yeah.
Like sort of going off topic again. Like I didn't even know that the PCA show was on the weekend. PCA is obviously like a bit of another world, but looking at the results of that, I don't know what they even want.
Oh wow! I knew it was on around this time. I just totally forgot as well that it was on the weekend. What do you mean?
Well, PCA is an untested fed.
Yeah.
But they look like they didn't award the guys that looked like they shouldn't be tested, which doesn't really make sense to me. Because if you look at PCA worldwide, it's quite closely aligned with an IFBB standard. But yeah, even that WFF, like you don't hear about them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can go in as a natural competitor and go toe to toe with open guys who are pushing boundaries, which is so weird to me.
Oh, no, that's what I did. You remember that was one of my first shows like 7-8 years ago? Remember I did WFF?
Oh, yes.
And remember you weren't allowed to come backstage to Tammy?
Yeah, not allowed to do backstage. Yeah. Look, they're pretty much like kind of they're not as heard of as much now. To be honest, I don't have any competitors that are posing with me. Yeah, no one. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that overseas they have a kind of bigger.
They're huge overseas. They're huge in the United Kingdom because I know heaps of guys that pick that. Like it's not as recognized like an IFBB, but like it's not like looked at as an afterthought. It's like cool.
Yeah, it's up in the mix. Yeah,
and they're reasonably tied into Asia too.
Yeah, because my coach just competed in Thailand and the PCA won the pro card. It's a smaller pool than what IFBB is, so he's using that as a stepping stone to IFBB. But still, like I compare that to here, and it just seems so odd to me, especially when you see because obviously a lot of the guys that sort of influence my coaching are UK based, and they are all over the PCA shows. And I think, wait, we have PCA here. Why is no one doing it? Yeah. And obviously, and then going back because I do have IFBB competitors. Not for the previous seasons I haven't, but for upcoming seasons I have as many IFBB as I would ICN, NBA, ANB. They only award 7 pro cards a season. So overseas, you're getting like greater recognition than that. So it's quite a tight pool, which makes me wonder why people don't go into the PCA, for example. Because to get one pro card a season for your category is quite tight. Like it's to think like ICN just had 3 per category as well. Yeah, because like Mike Calusi won the open bodybuilding pro card, and there was no one even standing a chance against that. You know what I mean? I just wonder why the incentive isn't there to sort of branch off. But yeah, I don't know. Just thought you guys might know.
Did you go to the PCA show?
Myself? No. PCA show. I've been encouraged to do it, but I haven't looked into it enough. I have friends who coach clients into it. Yeah, but again, I wouldn't know enough about it. Yeah.
I just think people want to compete in whatever's flavor of the month.
Yeah, I think it's just that IFBB is more glamorous. Like it's cool, as PCA is.
It's just smaller. And I don't think
Yeah.
PCA, probably WFF, they don't market themselves as much. So it's also, not many people know about them unless their coach tells them about them or they know someone that's competed in that federation. So they're just, you're not the big juggernauts are your IFBBs, your ICNs, your WBFFs, they're the big ones as well. It's just the smaller ones just need to kind of build a bit more traction, I guess, and get out there and
They all need a great promoter. That's what they need.
They do need a great promoter. You did a very good job of the ANB promotion, actually.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm very happy. I'm very happy I picked that show. So
me too, bro. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No, it went well. That was
I missed out. I'm so sorry. I would have definitely have come. I wasn't in the States.
Donna, so. I did have your name on the door.
I know you told me.
I did have your name on the door just in case. But next year, definitely next year.
I would have come. I had like 5 or 6 posing athletes at your show. So
you did. Your athletes did very well.
Yes, they did.
Where were you, just away, or did you have something on?
I was at WBFF
cool.
in Queensland. Yes, I was there and presenting awards, and I also had 2 clients there as well. So it's just hard. So when shows are on clashing at every weekend, it's like you've got to choose, and it's crap. But what do you do,
Yeah, I get worried coming into, because like I'm just starting to ramp up with client competitors. And the crossovers for the upcoming season are going to be pretty shit. But
I was just going to say, going on to earlier what you were saying before about what do we think about season A, one thing that I've noticed is that there is a higher or larger amount of competitors that I've noticed who now cross-compete in different federations. It used to only be, I'm just going to do the one federation and that's it. And now it's actually quite commonplace for athletes to do 2 or even 3 different federations in a season. So this is what I've noticed. And this is why you probably, if you follow me on social media, you'll hear me harp on the fact, start early, because generally speaking, people want to do 2 or more feds. And you'll even find coming into it, some of these competitors, if they're, say, competing in season B later in the year, they'll go and watch shows in season A and they'll be like, hey, I watched A and B, I want to do that show too, in addition to whatever else they were primarily doing. So then it's like, okay, now we've got to make sure that we've got enough posing sessions for you to learn a routine and so forth. So that's what I've noticed a lot with season A, is that there's a lot more cross competing, in different federations. But what you said, it's going to be a bit of a shit show, for lack of a better word, for season B, because I know exactly you've got the amount of competitors that I have at the moment, and going into season B, this will be like the biggest season that I've had ever in my time. Yeah, I'm sure you're the same, right?
Yeah, same. Yeah, season A next year will be even worse.
Yeah,
I like to get clients early. I like 40 weeks. I like to know. I don't prep them from 40 weeks. I just like to get an idea of how they tick prior to actually engaging in the prep. And responsiveness and things like that. So like typically if someone comes to me now, unless, like I had a girl yesterday, like I said before, who was really intent on season B and had data from previous coaches. And I was happy to say, all right, you got to jump into this ASAP. Let's consult tonight. But typically I would push them into the next year. Yeah, unless they're genetically inclined. What were you going to say, Izzy?
I was just going to say, we're lucky in the fact that like our coaching, like we have a team. So even the other weekend at Nationals, when originally we had a client lined up for the NBA competition, we had someone to go to the NBA competition, and then me and Michael could go to Sydney. And that'll probably be something that runs into like the further seasons. The only thing that I'm worried about is like, if Michael's prepping and then I'm prepping for IFBB next season A, and then I also have a couple girls doing the natural federations in season A as well, having like competing on the same weekends as clients too, or even like weekends like before and after. But yeah, we're lucky that we have the team sort of aspect, which makes it so much easier.
Have you prepped have you prepped alongside clients before?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. Although I think because I competed
last year, didn't you? Last year.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. However, I did make one difference. So like prepping whilst coaching for me, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm deep in prep, I get like hyper focused and I can handle a lot. I'm more productive when I'm 6 weeks out than I am as sitting here right now as a fat slob, right?
Yeah.
I get way more done. I know a lot of people like that. When I'm in the zone, I'm so busy. you know, there's the cliche, right? You want something done, give it to the busiest person.
Mhm.
When I'm in prep, that's me. I can take on so much. So the coaching part, not an issue. However, I just picked shows that none of my clients were going to do for two reasons. One, I didn't want to stand next to anyone on my team, not for them and not for me. And I just didn't want that stress on the day as well of like, all right, you got to pump up. I need to start pumping up. The good thing with us too, we got 5 of us in our team who are all competitors. Me, my wife is also a comp prep coach too. So like we can juggle it, but I just wouldn't want to stand on stage the same day as one of my team.
I wouldn't want to be peaking one of my clients on the same day that I'm competing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not for any reason. You know how peak goes. You typically don't change much, but they still like to have that reassurance. Yeah, and I can't imagine myself to be completely emotionally invested at that point. I'm looking to do PCA Thailand in December, but the hernia surgery sort of threw that out a little bit. I think I'll be fine for it, but like the reason I picked that was because I wanted something for as far away from both seasons as possible. And I also like the timing of December because it's quite. I see it as inspiring for the clients that are coming into season A. Do you know what I mean? Like he's coming back out of it. We're starting prep now. Like sweet, you know what I mean? Like, and then everything that I sort of relate to them, they can sort of come back at me, but it's like, well, he just did this. So like, I get it. It must be like reasonable. You know what I mean?
I want to get your takes on this. And Donna, I want to get your take on it too. I love coaching when I'm prepping because I love checking in and like saying I'm in the trenches too. Like, I'm suffering too, like energy's like in the toilet. I got 6 face-to-face sessions today. I'm deep in the hole. But you need to go and do this week. You've got it. Your food's going down. This is happening. I love being in prep and being able to relate and say, you know, I'm going through exactly what you're going through. Donna, when you're posing, when you were going for your pro card and you were doing, I know because you do more face-to-face than any of us, right? I know you do online check-ins and stuff too, which is another service you do, which I think is freaking phenomenal and everyone loves it. But I know you do a lot of face-to-face. So when you were like, I'm going to say balls deep in the trenches, but when you were suffering and body fat was fucking low and you're doing 9-10 hours a day, and I know that coffee machine of yours was fucking on overdrive, did you find that even though it was energy depriving, did you find that you just had an adrenaline to push through it?
Absolutely.
Or did you suffer?
No, I didn't suffer. I would say maybe in the last week, I would say not suffer, but I just felt, my goodness, it was like a ton of bricks. You know, how am I going to organize everything, especially because my show was interstate as well. But no, you're absolutely right. Like you can relate to someone more and say, hey, you know, like I'm doing it tough as well. I'm trying to fit in my meals. I'm trying to do X, Y, Z, you know, at the same time as you. So yeah, and they love the fact that they've got someone else alongside them that's going through it as well. Yeah. But yeah, I think in the last week of my first show, the first WBFF show I did, which was in Sydney, you got to think between my previous show was 2017, so it was 5 years in between drinks, right? Was
that the Fitness Expo?
Yes,
that was. Yes.
Fitness Expo in Melbourne. That's right, 2017. So was that 5 years from last year? And I kind of just forgot that, you know, I should be taking a few days off. And the day before I was going to Sydney, I had a full day of posing as well as 10 check-ins, which takes me about 2.5 hours to do. And I still hadn't packed. I still hadn't had things ready. And I wanted to cry. So I think that was the only time that I felt like, what am I doing? Like I'm, you know, I had said this the other day, like you can do anything, but you can't do everything, you know? So I actually contacted, I think, all of those check-ins and said, can we reconvene next week? And every single one was like, of course, absolutely. Because they understood, you know, I kind of just overshot everything that I had to do and had to organize for me going interstate for a trip. So yeah, that's really the only time I've really felt it. But yeah, it's great when you're kind of in prep when other competitors are doing it too. You can, you know, really relate.
And the reason I asked is like, and Michael, you might know some, but I know some IFBB guys who are PTs, coaches, who literally fucking shut business down 6 weeks out, man. Like no more sessions, no check-ins, everything goes on hold. They just stop earning an income. They're like, all right, I'm 6 weeks. Whereas like same as Don, like I'll grind right to like a day out, right? I like to be productive. But do you know, how do you two function?
My first prep, I worked all the way. I was on heaps of PT. I worked all the way up till 2 days out. And and to be fair with you, like people always say, like one of the girls said, I want to take 2 weeks off before the show off work. And I said, the second you lose that routine, you're going to feel every bit of it. Like, just keep working up as long as you can. And yeah, man, I didn't struggle. There was days where like it was hard to get through the day. But back to that IFBB IFBB guys, the IFBB guys are lazy when it comes to work. Like very, very lazy. And I've heard that story so many times. And in prep, even when Izzy was prepping, and she'd want to like not work, I said, mate, your career doesn't stop just because you're in prep. You know what I mean?
I remember during my peak week, on the last couple of my peak week days, I stopped my PTs. And up until then, from the minute I started prep, like I would drive to the gym early in the morning, I would pose and I would do my cardio. I would then work at the gym for however many hours, and then I would finish working behind reception. Then I would have my PT clients, so I'd PT 3 or 4 people, and then I would train, and then I would like finish my steps and pose again, and like I'd be at the gym for like 13 hours a day. And then in my peak week, on the last couple of days I didn't, and like it just threw everything out. And like, yeah, I could have taken a little bit of a rest, but like the routine behind the prep and like the fact that it's hard makes it so rewarding and makes it so motivating, and like keeps you on track in the first place, because you know that you don't have a buffer. Like you can't just stop doing something because it throws everything out. Like you just have to keep going with everything to sort of maintain momentum right until like you step on stage, pretty much.
I say to my clients as well, I've had people say, I'm going to take 2 weeks off or 1 week off. And I actually tell them it's not necessary. I say, look, maybe 2 to 3 days, because obviously a lot of people are getting tans and they're wanting to, there's last minute things that they have to purchase that they don't have at home. So for that sort of thing, we all have like prep brain, and we forget certain things. We do silly things right towards the end of our prep. So I normally say, look, 2 to 3 days out is max, is what you should take, so that you can do all those things like your tan, organize your show bag that you're going to be taking on the day, last minute things that you haven't gotten. That's enough. You don't really need a week off at all. I've never done it. So
I tell them to take the week after the prep off, because that's when it's like life is fucking. I don't know what you guys get to. Like I did my first prep. My second prep actually pulled out of 5 weeks out, which is another story. But that first few days after you finish the prep, it's like life is like this whole new thing that you forgot existed. And I feel like you're almost better off just taking a few days off afterwards, because you can really enjoy that, as opposed to before. Man, I remember when I took the time off those 2 days, I was watching Pokemon for like 12 hours a day, because I just needed something to kill the time, because I was just waiting. Yeah.
And from my personal experience, in like, this is just relating to females, it probably would be even less for males. Like, as long as you have your bikini and you have your heels, like accumulating and like prepping your meals for the day, like buying a girl there, like from Priceline, or like going to Target to get a black towel, takes in total like only a couple of hours. Like you don't need a whole week during your peak week to prepare. Like it takes not that long to put aside stuff for a little show bag. And that, again, like from past experience, like I would only really give myself a few hours to sort of get everything ready, like not days on end.
But aren't you drinking 12 liters of water a day?
She's living on the toilet.
Don't you need time to drink 12 liters of water?
Man, I just back a topic. I prep my last prep I pulled out of because my coach was not. He wasn't making me drink 12 liters of water.
Yeah, just for anyone listening, that was a fucking joke. Don't.
Yeah, yes, it was. Yes.
that was a joke. Oh, yeah. Sorry,
he had me doing like everything that you would not. Yeah. Anything that we take the piss about is probably what he had me doing. And man, I was like 6 weeks out. I couldn't even go up and down the stairs anymore. I could, but it was like, Jesus Christ. Like, and I remember sitting on the cross trainer in the mornings, like almost collapsing. And I'm like, this is 6 weeks out, man. Like, what is going on?
At 6 weeks out, Michael went shopping and he bought himself 2 pineapples that weren't ripe enough. And I just mentioned, I said, Michael, like, you can't chop these up. They're not ripe enough, like, just yet. Like, they were completely green and like hard. So he, like, this is 6 weeks out. He picks them up and like throws them across the kitchen out of anger. Because like, I've never in my life seen somebody react so badly to a prep. Like,
I was on 1,400 calories. Yeah, it was torturous. 1,400 calories, and I was on an hour and a half cardio a day. I'm not going to drop names, but everyone knows who it is because I've spoken the.
Yeah,
I
man,
feel
we could do a whole episode.
I know.
Like you've heard me and the boys recently deconstruct some peak weeks that people have sent to us, but like some of the stuff that's going on is like crazy. Crazy. You guys heard about the one that we broke down about all those, the 30 diuretics, laxatives, all that stuff that we on our body?
No, I haven't heard that one.
Have you heard of this one? But have you heard of the hemorrhoid cream wrap your body in Glad Wrap?
Yep, Michael, you know who I've heard of that one.
Can you text it to me?
Yeah.
I want to know.
We were talking about him before when James was here.
No, one of the it happened up in Queens.
What's that? You put hemorrhoid cream and then Glad Wrap your body.
Yeah. So this, I think what they're trying to do is this, right? They're trying to outsmart the body, which is not going to happen because I think what they think is going to happen is the cream is going to draw fluid from out of the skin, right? And it'll sit in the Glad Wrap. But what? Really? Yeah. But what happens?
Sorry.
Even if that worked, which that won't work.
No, I'm saying really. She texted me the coach who did that. I'm like, what the fuck?
Well, that won't work. But even if that did work, let's say it did work, right, Don? And it did pull fluid out from out the skin. The coach thinks it's going to make them look dry. If it did pull fluid from out of the skin, guess where the skin's going to take fluid from to rejuvenate it from?
Mm-hmm.
Inside the muscle cell. So you're literally like that method alone is counterintuitive to yourself, even though it doesn't even fucking work. But if it did work, it's still counterintuitive because then your body will just correct itself, right? It'll get itself back to equilibrium and it'll pull water from the muscle, which is not where you want water to come from.
Well, if you get Preparation H gel, which is like it's a hemorrhoid cream, and you put it on your nipples. So when guys have like big nipples, like it's not gyno, but like they just have big nipples and it looks like they have gyno, so they think that it looks bad. If you put this cream on the nipples, apparently it dries them back out and they sit back tight again.
What cream is it?
Preparation H.
Preparation H.
Yeah, it's because I remember when I was like 17, I used to have like I had like fucking, that sounds weird as I had like not big nipples, but like they were sort of soft. And I remember I was really paranoid, so I'm searching online and some guys like, you can try this Prep H thing. I remember I bought it when I was in Hawaii like a year later and I tried it. I'm like, holy shit, it works. Probably works.
If any of the four of us message in the group chat that we have burnt nipples over the next 2 days, we know exactly what's happening.
One of the like obviously I'm going back to Enhance. Yeah, one of the guys in Queensland was prepped by an international coach and he copped flack last week because he had the guy, like I'm talking an open enhanced 90 plus kilogram bodybuilder, and he had him on 1,100 calories and like a thyroid dose, which is like 4 times HRT. And that's ridiculous. But
I want to put a message out. It's like, guys, if you get something from your coach, let's say like we don't coach you and you get something from your coach, and as someone who is not a coach and maybe doesn't understand the fundamentals of how it all works, and it stands out as a bit concerning to you, it's probably fucking concerning.
Mm-hmm. And I have no shame. How do I put this? Like, I'm not gonna hammer a good coach's methods or go against something. Let's say you did something that I potentially disagreed with, but it wasn't like completely fucked up like what we're talking about. I'd have nothing bad to say. I'd be like, yep, sweet. He knows what he's doing, whatever. But if someone is doing something blatantly wrong, I'm not going to have an issue in calling them out and like being completely honest about it, because like hearing that about the diuretics and stuff is just stupid. And back to like the peak week water manipulation, etc. I feel like the water manipulation and the really obscure methods for peak week have gotten a lot of traction because where that application has come from is in like top level IFBB pro bodybuilders who are fatless, like they have nothing on them. So the chance for error is a little bit, still not low, but it's still not non-existent, but it's lower than someone who is at your local ICN show who realistically isn't fat-free. Like it's very, very rare that someone who's not in that pro rank is fat-free. When I'm talking pro level Olympia, I'm talking like Nick Walker, like that kind of spec. And then people see what these guys do and they try to model that with more water manipulation, things like that. And because there is such little fat mass available, there is less chance of something going wrong. And they do need that edge to break them. This is my perspective on it as well. You can tell me if you agree. That edge will potentially make a difference for them to jump a place. And they're at such a competitive level that occasionally they will have to take the risk because they're competing against guys who are absolutely unbelievable. But when you're at a local show, the risk there the reward you're going to get from that risk is probably not going to be enough to jump you up a place and get you a win. But it is enough of a risk that if it goes wrong, it can pull you right back down. I had a friend who did an IFBB show, but he's an entry-level competitor. He hammered the diuretics the day before, and if you saw him on the Friday compared to the Sunday, felt sorry for the guy, man.
Wow. And did he end up placing or?
No, not even. He looked like a completely different person.
Wow.
Yeah, but that was because he listened to a bro in the gym. Yeah, who did it 20 years ago and told him this works, this works. Dandelion root extract. What's it called? What's the diuretic called that's over the counter?
Fluid Away. It's called Fluid Away.
No, but there's one hydrochlorodiazide, is it?
Yeah, I think that's like.
I'm not too sure. I've never used or told someone to use a diuretic before, so.
I've recently taken over some bikini athletes who were not at like pro level bikini condition and were on like 600 calories, which is like 4 or 5 meals a day for. Excuse me, sorry, I scared you guys. Which was like something like 4 months worth. It was just like fish and salad 5 times a day. And this is the same girl who was put on 12 liters on her peak week. Not like you're risking 75% of your physique for a 1 to 2% difference, right? In you're talking about from stepping on a natural stage, but like the health risks associated with that, like 12 liters a day of demineralized water from Bunnings that you put in your lawnmower, like you can risk hyponatremia and all these types of things. So like people are putting out plans and they don't understand the consequences. Like there's some big risks associated with some of these things. And as Michael said, they're only going to work. Most of the people doing these practices are giving them to clients who aren't even in the condition that they're going to get the benefit from it anyway.
Yeah. One of the, on that as well, one of the boys who was supposedly, he was prepping for season B. I'm not sure if you know him. I've mentioned him in a podcast before. He had his potassium levels dropped to extremely low, like a medical emergency low, and his pancreas almost failed. He almost died, and he did that through over dieting. Basically, it was nothing to do with the fluids. But if he had been prescribed some kind of fluid protocol, he probably would have died if he had made it to the end.
Equally, like through his peaking or his comp prep, he's probably like going and doing things like really loading up sodium, but then not having the potassium balance on the other side to balance things out, right? So like, because some bro in the gym probably said, bro, you got to take 10 liters of water and smash salt on everything, but he's not thinking about how much potassium you're taking in to obviously counteract that.
Yeah. So, this specific example was I think it was just over dieting clenbuterol use, etc. But I'm saying more, if you were, let's say he was teetering on that risk factor and he went into the show and then he did some kind of water load, it probably would have been a lot more of a sinister outcome than what actually happened. And even in saying that, he was ICU, so it wasn't pretty as it was. But that's a risk because like no one gets I don't know what you do with your clients, but I very rarely do I get blood work at 4 to 6 weeks out to know what would actually be going on in terms of like electrolytes and whatnot.
I try and get one at around the time of the show, man.
Yeah, man, I try.
You know what? A lot of it is just because I'm fucking so curious as to what's going on.
Me
like,
too.
Internally.
The only reason, I know it's a bit of a weird one to say this, but I don't like doing that with clients because I know that it will freak them out and me potentially, especially like when I had like an open competitor a few weeks ago and I waited till 3-4 weeks post show, which I actually got hammered about. They said I should have got it straight after the show. But if he had seen his blood straight after the show, they wouldn't have been pretty. You know what I mean? Yeah. My brother did his bloods 10 weeks out from ICN last year and I remember looking at them thinking, is this guy like a natural competitor or, you know what I mean? Because they were like not great.
Yeah.
Hormones.
Well, I obviously I don't really know much about blood work related to Enhance, but I get all the natty athletes to do it, and I got mine done like the week of my show, and I had some markers that were a little bit out, mainly like testosterone was virtually non-existent, right?
Like James,
like virtually non-existent, which is not a good thing either, but it bounced back as soon as I went through recovery. But it's just interesting to see like how different people respond, like when they're dieted down or they're in stage condition, how people's liver function differentiates and things like that. But it's sometimes I'll get a client who's on, if there's certain things that are typical for prep but not in the normal range, I won't necessarily alarm them about them either, right? Because most of them don't understand how to read them either. So
The only difference that I observe between a healthy natural and a healthy enhanced competitor, and when I say, I'm not going to say healthy enhanced, but more like an entry to intermediate level enhanced competitor.
So you're saying not an abuser?
Yes, pretty much. The only time that I notice like obscene differences between the two sets of blood work is when oral steroids come into the picture, and that's mostly around liver function.
Yeah.
Outside of that, they're pretty well aligned. Because like I said with James, and he was giving me his bloods quite regularly, my brother, comparing them to like other clients that I had, it was just sort of like, well, these look more or less identical. And we reference them against mine a lot too, because I've used, he doesn't. So seeing like both of us at baseline is so interesting to see that some of my markers, man, even like in the peak of like a prep use, they're very, very indifferent to his.
Of course, yeah.
But that is genetic. That's heavily genetic as well. Like how someone, like I have, obviously I coach a pool of enhanced guys too. I have some guys that like sniff it and their bloods just go fucking ballistic. And I have guys that have been using for ages and their bloods, and I hammer them for bloods because I'm like, hey man, you've been using this, you need to give me bloods, Finally they do it and you get the bloods and you're like, how is everything fucking perfect? Like it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think like for females as well, like Donna, do you do bloods? Do you ever do bloods just to check up or?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Even before my last show and the ones before. Yeah.
I think it's important.
Yeah, no, something that I always I like bloods. I find them interesting. And it's a bit of a nerdy thing for me. So like I try to give as much as I can. The thing is getting them out of people can be difficult at times.
Yeah.
Unless you're at like a crucial interval.
Yeah. Just so like for anyone listening as well, like if you're competing for a show, let's say you're doing a natural show, pretty rare that your bloods are going to be pretty perfect close to show. I reckon that I've only ever seen one person whose bloods are like spot on, and that's like a male whose hormone profile was spot on, and that was actually Trimboli. But that man's just a freak.
Lucky him.
Man's just a freak of nature.
Yeah. I was gonna say, we did a recording with George Osborne from the UK about a month and a half ago. I don't know if you know George. Would either of you? No. Just like he's a natural bodybuilder from England, and he's now enhanced, so he's taken that step. But the reason he actually took the enhanced step was because he competed naturally. I'm not too sure how many times, but every time his hormone profile kept taking longer to come back. And the last run, it was 9 months post show, and his levels still hadn't come back. And he had some really bad fatigue issues for the first 2-3 months. So he's surrounded by open bodybuilders. He decided to take that plunge. And that there was an example of where things can potentially go wrong. Because he said just every show that he did, it was like he had a month onto it. But the reason I bring this up is because you said before you bounced back pretty quickly. Had a guy last year pull out of the show. His levels were less than 100, the free testosterone, towards the end. And then within 3 weeks of it, he was back to like 570, which was like, I couldn't believe what I was reading. I was like, wow, like this is good on him.
As a natural athlete, it took me 16 weeks to get back to a normal level.
Okay, so it did take a good 4 months. You said you're 36, correct? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
A young 36.
Yes. Yeah. So like that's why George, for example, decided to take that plunge. I'm not too sure what he's doing now, but interesting nonetheless. Because I wanted to add here too, just because you're a natural competitor doesn't mean you shouldn't do labs.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like 99% of everyone I've ever coached has been natural, and we still do bloods just because it's interesting data. Sometimes you pick up something that you just weren't expecting to pick up.
Yeah. The worst part is when they I get not even clients, but just individuals who, it's almost like when they draw bloods, let's say they don't lean out how they want to, or they don't progress how they want to, and then they draw bloods because they're thinking, okay, cool, maybe something's going to be off here, and it makes sense. And then you get the labs and it's like everything checks out here, and then it's just like demoralizing. I had that happen to one recently as well. And just so many genetic factors on top of just like your thyroid hormone function, etc., which dictate your ability to respond. There's a few guys. I'm not too good with this stuff, and I'm sure it's quite a complex topic. So I'd be surprised if you are going over just like a lot of metabolic dysfunction on a like genetic cellular level, which can inhibit like progression. I was reading some posts last night, like Scooby Prep, the name was. I'm not too sure if it's just a sales pitch, but some of the concepts he was going over, I was like, wow, I don't know anything about that. Because obviously I'm sure you've had it before, particularly in females, where you have clients who just do not budge.
Yeah, I think it's like it goes back to like the almost as basic as like the body types, right?
Yeah.
Like some people just genetically get lean really easy and so. Like Donna, would you say that it's easier for you to get shredded or put muscle on?
Easy for me to get shredded.
Yeah, like you always keep good condition, and when you get shredded, you get shredded. Like for me, like I've got to delete like 800 grams of carb plus just for my weight to barely increase over 6 months. But for me to get shredded, like I'll miss.
You look like a human anatomy chart when you competed.
Yeah, so I get really buzzed, but it's so hard for me to get big, right? To get big, and for me to get big, I put on more body fat than say the next person would. So I think like it definitely goes back to that. But I think the typical things we see a lot in females, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with wellness, is I have such a big percentage of athletes. I had one on the weekend who is hard as nails up top, hard as nails, veins all over the upper body from the belly button up. That just isn't matched in the lower half. So I think going back to what you said about this guy, I think he's probably on the right path. It probably makes a lot of sense what he's saying. And I think we see instances of it quite regularly.
Yeah, because obviously I had that issue with Effie as well, with the hard on the top and soft on the bottom.
Yeah, we just want to be like Donna, perfect all over.
Yeah.
No, I don't reckon I am. I reckon I'm in that category as well, where I feel like my
battle a little bit more for the lower.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like my lower half, I have to, even in my last WBFF show, I was, in my opinion, I think I was one of the most conditioned bikini athletes, especially my top half, compared to my
Donna's
lower
got the
half.
best six-pack, the most symmetrical, sweet six-pack.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's, I don't know if I should say this, but I very rarely train abs. I don't really train abs.
I'm so glad that you said that. I'm so glad that you said that.
And I get into condition quite easily for my top half, and the only way for my lower half to get leaner is to get shredded up top. Like that's just the way my body is. Like I feel like that's been me all over the years,
What's funny? So with my 2 preps, my first prep, my legs leaned out very, very fast, and my upper body was a lot more difficult. My second prep, my waist and my waist chest delts were within like 4 or 5 weeks, and my legs just did not budge. And there was such a difference. You remember that, Izzy?
Yeah.
Remember I was looking at my legs thinking, where the fuck are they? But like I'd never had that problem before. It was just so interesting how much it changed from one season, like 1 year to 2 years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like my body's so even. Even now, I'm in a little mini cut now, and every time I look in the mirror, I'm like, oh yeah, my arms are leaner. And then I look at my midsection and I'm like, oh, my midsection's leaner too. And then I look at my legs and I flex my leg and I'm like, oh, okay, like my quads have come in too. Like my body, especially even when I prepped, it was pretty even like throughout my whole entire body. But even just managing Michael's client Effie, who like I didn't manage her, but just like helping with her prep and stuff, emotionally trying to get her to grasp the idea that yes, we understand that your upper body is diced, like we know that it's diced, but like you are only as lean as your legs and your glutes, which are your fattest body part. And it was just really hard to keep her head on a little bit, with trying to keep like pushing for more leanness through her lower body, even though she was so sort of validated from the upper body leanness. And yeah, it was, and you could visually see that it was becoming quite disheartening for her, like knowing that like from upwards she was ready, but like she was still like 5 weeks out from her lower body.
She still looked amazing though.
She's incredible. I'm a big fan of her physique. I think like from a coaching point of view, you just have to look at, I always say, what's the trade-off? All right. What's the risk reward? So it's like, all right, if I go harder on the upper to get that lower lean, what is like my downside to it? Well, I could potentially sacrifice a little bit of upper body tissue. That's probably the biggest. And I'm going to get even harder if that's even possible. But is the trade-off of having tie-in and line through the quads going to be more influential on the judges than a little bit less side potentially through the back and through the shoulders? And I think always the answer is yes. If I had to push it and sacrifice tissue to get the legs in, I would have done it. We just needed an extra 2 weeks, and she wanted to do the MBA initially, but then she decided not to do it. I feel like if we had those, was it 2 weeks, we probably would have
been able, because you saw how quickly she came in those 2 weeks before ANB.
Yeah, she was amazing.
Yeah, we just put because I'd never put the foot down that hard with her, because I didn't feel like she ever needed it. But then I just thought, fuck it, she felt it, but she managed.
Yeah,
because that was one of those like as bad as it sounds, I was one of those sub 1200 calorie kind of runs where we just had to go for it, and we did, and she looked great. The only reason she didn't get the top placing is because the two athletes ahead of her were, I guess, just more complete athletes. Which was
both of those athletes are multiple Fed pros. Right?
exactly right.
So it's
she had no shame in that loss.
But she didn't miss the criteria. She was on the criteria. She just got out muscled in a couple of shots, right?
Yeah.
So that's there's nothing else she could have done. She presented an amazing package. But equally, just going back to, if you've got that choice of Donna like a Chloe, right? So hard as nails up top, but she could just come in a little bit more through the legs and just get that little bit more quad detail. So me and her are going to push for that, because even if she just sacrifices a little bit of shoulder tissue, it's still worth it. The trade-off's still worth it. So
yeah.
Especially I find as well for the fitness criteria where you do need that lower body leanness. And the fact that comparing Effie's previous photos from her last prep, she seemed to grow her upper body quite easily. And like mass wise, she was holding more muscle than last time, and her delts were quite developed. So we were more than willing to sort of sacrifice a little bit of size to fit more so like the backside of the criteria. We just needed.
Did you do her posing, Donna?
Yes.
Yeah, she looked good.
Yeah.
She looked good.
Is she gonna gonna just take some time off now?
Was this?
Yeah. Sorry, Michael.
There you go, Izzy. Go, Izzy.
Is she taking time off?
Is she taking time off?
I think so. It's just hard because she is like, obviously it's hard to say that she's a little bit older because you're older than her, but she thinks that the time's gotten away from her. It's just hard as well because I feel like we had a very clear, concise kind of, I guess, division to place her into. I feel like it would be more inspiring for her. Do you know what I mean? She obviously did the ANB fitness where she did fit in, but I personally wonder from a coaching perspective how much tissue she could add in the course of like an 18-month period. And then she's coming up to like that kind of menopausal phase as well, where things will just take it'll be a little bit more of a roller coaster too. So
she'd probably be like prime for that season, that ANB sports division, because we're actually going to call it sports physique, right? Because we are going to favor someone who's got muscle and condition as hell.
Is that going to be season B and G? Okay.
Cool. Yeah, she's definitely not doing back-to-back seasons. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, you wouldn't do season B, but like, there's definitely a spot for her. It's just equally, and I'll put this out there, on a different day with a different fitness lineup where, you don't have the two girls who were there who, just had a ton of tissue.
Yeah.
She could easily be in that top conversation in any lineup, right? So it is the season you pick, and it is who shows up on the day too, because I've seen athletes win pro cards in seasons that were okay, and I've seen athletes win pro cards in seasons that were freaking awesome. So
we even said to her that I don't know if I mentioned this before, but if she showed up to the ICN Nationals, that she probably would have done super well. Like her front shot would have eaten every single fitness girl's front shot there, and they didn't seem to be awarding that sort of rear shot as much as they did the front shot.
She could have done a Lily. She could have done a Lily and
I know.
The girl that won the overall in New South Wales looked very, very good.
Yeah, she did.
Very, very good. Like
She's from New South Wales, or
WA. As soon as she walked out, I sort of said to Marion's husband, I'm like, yeah, she's gonna win.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you reckon? I'm like, trust me, man. Like, I know it's horrible to hear, but like, she looks ridiculous. Yeah. Especially when she won her first category, which was like one of the subcategories. I was like, yeah, well, that's what they want. Yeah, there we go. The day's done. And yeah, without a doubt, she fucking cleaned it up, because the girl that finished second didn't even hold a candle to her.
Wow.
It was just like a clear differentiation. You remember the girl that finished second is? Or third?
Girl in the green.
I'm thinking of the one, she was top three, whoever it was. She won the pro card as well.
Girl in the red. No, the girl in the green.
Yeah, I'm not too sure.
No, there was two girls who looked very similar. But like when the girl who won came out, you could instantly tell. Just a little bit more balance, between like her upper and lower body. She seemed to pose a little bit better. She just presented herself as a whole a little bit better. And she was very much so like, you pick a IFBB bikini winner and put them side by side, and they would be
Wow.
like rotating constantly, trying to like pick them apart.
Except for the glutes.
But you could tell very much so that they loved the very feminine fitness, if that makes sense. The tiny little waist, the nice shredded legs.
Did he just die?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe come on again.
Yeah, we'll just wait. Keep talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I was gonna move on. I feel like we probably need to do a part 2 for this because we got so much here that we didn't get.
Yeah, I feel like we can get through.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, we will, because I'm thinking what we'll do is we'll get you individually, and then we'll get Michael individually as well.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Okay, but
I feel like a purely posing one would be super.
Yeah, I think so too, because
especially going into season B.
I'm just checking if
I feel like not many. I've not seen. You know, I don't know if you've interviewed another posing coach before. I've not really seen anyone do a podcast with a posing coach. You know, I've done one like a long time ago, but I haven't seen one recently, and I think that would be good just to have a different perspective on shows.
No, I agree. It's more like, there we go. It's just because it's helpful for people as well.
Yeah, in addition to having prep coaches, which is great, like just having posing coaches and obviously you know the fed promoters as well. No, I'm more than happy to do a part 2.
There you are.
Sorry guys, the power just went out here, and because my laptop's connected to the Wi-Fi at home, it just cut me straight off, so I'm on the phone. Apologies.
That's okay. We're gonna wrap up soon anyway, and we were just saying that I think we'll do a part 2, but like just individual with each of you, so we can do one talking predominantly about one about the other. I was going to say as well, Donna, just with the posing concept as well, one of the things we noticed was the posing standard was a bit wishy-washy across the shows. I actually noticed it more in IFBB than I did ICN, ANB, etc. Some of the IFBB posing was quite terrible, actually. I'm not sure how much you had. I don't know, did you have a lot of clients in that, or not as many?
Are you talking about the Vic show or just nationals, or what do you?
Vic and WA.
Like a lot of the state shows, a lot of the IFBB state shows, like every second girl who walked out, you sort of stopped and like thought for a second, like, did she do any investment like whatsoever? Like there were genuinely some people who looked like they were about to fall over. It was that bad.
Yeah. Look, I could say that with almost all feds, to be honest, that there's always someone that walks out and you think, did you actually take this seriously? Did you actually take your presentation seriously? And obviously, like with IFBB, you know, it's a different type of posing, and it's so pristine. The posing is so, you know, beautiful, and you know, I almost call it like a sass, but like an understated sass, as opposed to like WBFF, it's a very sassy, you know, big arms, big movement posing. But going back to what you said, I could say that with all federations, that some people look like, did you actually do any posing? You know, they were looking at the other person on stage to see what they're doing to make sure that they're, you know, doing the turns correctly, or they're walking out like, you know, as I always say, like truck driver Betty, you know, like you're just coming out, you're doing like a normal walk. It's not even a stage walk. So people don't realize that, you know, you're walking out on stage, and that's the first thing that the judges are seeing, and they're already noting down numbers and who they want a closer look at. They don't need to wait until you're in your lineup or doing a pose down or already in your front and back pose to know who they want in their top 3 or top 5. They already know from when you walk out, right, we like this one, we're noting her number down. And then it's almost like when they're in the poses, this is, you know, me talking to judges and promoters telling me this as well. I'm sure, Michael, you probably agree as well. Your judges are already looking at, you know, the clients when they're athletes, when they're at least doing their T-walk, like with you guys. That's the first thing that they're going to see before they're in their comparisons, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I remember doing my NBA show, and the girl in front of me was like, where am I walking? And I said, oh, like you do your T-walk. And she goes, what's a T-walk? And I'm like trying to explain it to her like before she's walking on, and I'm thinking, gosh.
Yeah.
Touching on a point, I'm pretty sure Michael and Donna, I know you reshared it on your story, is like, even if they do, and up like investing in posing lessons, like they can do 100. At the end of the day, like posing is never really a direct reflection of the coach. Like I know from like the last ICN show we went to, the one in Vic, looking at girls who had posed with people I know and thinking, I know you don't look like that, because when I've seen videos of you posing with the coach, you don't look like that. But then like when they're by themselves, like it's evident that it isn't something, like they haven't been watching the videos, they haven't been assessing everything that their posing coach has been telling them to do, they haven't been listening to like the audio of the video. And yeah, like you can only like provide somebody with so much. And like even the lessons I did with you, the amount of hours outside of those lessons, and like even now I will occasionally walk and be like, oh, that's like what it's meant to feel like, or that's what it's meant to look like. And like this has been going on for like nearly 2 years now. So yeah, there is just so much, like it's just hours and hours until like you look half decent when posing.
And this is why you hear me harp on about start early, because it's you about, you're right. Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that, because there's only so much that I can do as a posing coach. There's only so much that I can impart and hold your hand to. And it's like you as prep coaches, you give them, you know, their program, you know, their diet, their training, and then they have to go out and execute that and adhere to that. Yeah. We can only do so much. And it's what they do out of their, you know, studio or whatever it is, that absolutely counts. So this is why you hear me harp on all the time, you know, start early, because that gives you time. And the only way that you get better at something is repeating it, practicing it, honing in on that new skill, that new craft that you're learning. And when someone comes to me 8 weeks out of a show and they expect me to be David Copperfield pulling out a, you know, rabbit out of a hat, expecting me to be a magician, it's not going to happen. And the reason why I repeat it so much, you hear it on my stories all the time, is I know that someone's going to get the message eventually. They may not pick it up that day, but the next month that I put it out there, they'll hear me say it, and then the penny will drop, and then they'll realize, hopefully soon enough and not too late after their show, where they've gone, okay, yeah, next time I make sure that I start early.
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky in the fact that even some of the girls we have now for season B are super invested in their posing. And I find there's nothing more satisfying than females specifically, like getting constant like video updates of like their training, their posing and what they're doing. And you just become so invested because you know that they're invested. And it just makes the whole entire prep for both like coaches and clients just so much more enjoyable, knowing that like they're getting and they're actually trying throughout the whole entire process. It's not just a half-assed thing that like they once a week think, oh shit, like I should probably put my heels on.
And this is why I do check-ins. You know, I have ideally, if I see someone, you know, in one session, I get them to book in a check-in the week after. And then they know, shit, I've got to check in on Wednesday night with Donna. I better have done my homework. Like it kind of, that shouldn't have to happen. They should be accountable anyway, but they know that their check-in with me is looming. And they have better have practiced whatever we learnt in the session the week before to make sure that they've, you know, that I can see that they're progress in our check-in. So I offer these check-ins, you know, for every single session after our in-person sessions, because this is how I, you know, make sure that someone's kind of on the ball, making sure that they're progressing with their posing. You know, a lot of people just don't, they underestimate, and, you know, I'm going to talk about guys, underestimate the value of presentation, and how they just think they just need to get into condition and think, I just need to be 3% shredded, bro. And that'll see me through. And then next thing they're on stage like the Tin Man, and then the guy next to them that is 3% shredded, bro, and that can move with ease and, you know, pose beautifully, they're going to be the ones that get looked at.
Yeah, no, I did notice in the top level as well, a lot of the guys who were in really good shape, they still couldn't pose.
Can I say, even like you mentioning IFBB physique, that's just, I mean, some of them yes, definitely
Yeah, that was probably the main ones that I noticed in was within the men's, because it is that misconception internally where they do think I'm in shape, so who gives a shit about how I pose? Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Oh, he's outside now.
Oh, I'm having massive internet.
That's all right. This is going to be hard for the YouTube. We'll wrap up there anyway. Thanks, guys, for jumping on with us.
Pleasure, guys.
We'll do it
Thank you.
100%. Do it again soon, and I'll be in touch.
Yeah.
Organize additional
Love to.
days.
Yeah.
All right.
Look forward to it.
Enjoy.